Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be watching, listening to us from. My name is AyoT, and this is another episode of the Home of Nigerian Football podcast. As always, I have a special guest, a player for the Super Falcons of Nigeria, and for another club that we are about to we are about to find out about. I mean, last season she played her club football for Leicester City Women in the English Women's Super League. I'm talking about Ashleigh Plumptre. Ashleigh, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks. I like the introduction.
Amazing. Before we get into the football talk, I just want to ask how you're doing. How's the family? How has the break been since the World Cup ended for us?
Yeah, it's been really, really nice. I mean, I've been back home. I think we flew back on the 7th. So, yeah, I've just had a lot of time with family and friends. Like when actually, as soon as I got home, I got really ill, maybe just like a come down. So I was ill for about a week. Yeah, wasn't getting out of bed for about 3 days. So that was, I feel like, yeah, just a come down of everything. But after that, I've just kind of been with family, seen friends. I've been into Leicester and like said like a proper goodbye to everybody. So yeah, just like being around people that I care about and having more like quality time with the family that I don't normally get during the season, which has been nice.
And that's good to hear. Sorry to hear about the illness. Um, Maybe it was just all the travel and the stress. Sometimes your body needs rest, which is not something that you get a lot of in football, to be fair.
Yeah, I think that's why I felt it so much. It was like as soon as I got home, I was like, ah.
No, yeah, but good to see you doing well now. Let's talk about the World Cup a little bit. It was your first Women's World Cup. I mean, yeah, someone that a lot of Nigerian fans have grown to love very quickly because, frankly, it hasn't been that long since you became a part of the team and you started um playing with us. But for you, how did it feel to get called up to represent Nigeria at your first FIFA Women's World Cup?
Yeah, it still feels surreal to say that like I've been to the World Cup because it wasn't something that when I first joined the team, it wasn't something that I'll be honest, it was never like that's my aim. For me, like I think knowing that I was when I joined the team, we were like preparing to try and get to AFCON with AFCON qualifiers and everything. That was first in my mind. And then like I remember my dad was like, you're going to your first major tournament, like senior major tournament. This was AFCON. And then you just kind of take it, like one game at a time, trying to qualify for AFCON. Then you're at AFCON and you've got to, you know, try and qualify for the World Cup. And then when we qualify for the World Cup, I'm like, gosh, it's like actually real. And then even then, like even though you qualify for the World Cup, it doesn't mean you're guaranteed to go to the World Cup. So, yeah, I feel as if the World Cup isn't just like the 5 weeks we're away. It was pretty much like since I've been here, it's almost been like a progression, trying to like almost like get there. But for me, it was never like um it was never really like a personal aim because obviously I've said to people before like joining the team was something that I wanted to do for me personally, like what I could learn about being on the team and from a something that's probably bigger than football is learning about my heritage and stuff. So every experience I've had with the team has just been like something that I've really valued. And then obviously getting to represent Nigeria on the world stage is something that, yeah, when I first joined the team, I genuinely didn't think I was going to be able to do. But yeah, I felt a lot of pride when I was at the tournament. Just like I genuinely felt like I was representing something bigger than myself. How could you not, on the world stage? But yeah, it was an experience that and especially being my first World Cup, I will remember for my whole life. And I did while I was there. Every day I like wrote in a little diary so I would remember the experience. It's something that I
Oh,
can
that's
hold on to. So every day I can like reflect on. I can read back on every day on how I felt. Sometimes you have really tough days and sometimes you have good days. But the overall experience is something that, yeah, honestly, I've just felt very privileged to be able to experience.
no, amazing to hear. I mean, the World Cup is something that footballers, male and female at all ages, they just dream. Growing up, it's one of those dreams that you have. Playing in the World Cup, and for you to have been able to achieve it, only a short while after joining the team, it's an amazing feat for sure. Um, about the qualification process, let me ask you this. The way it works in in Africa is you play in the WAFCON, and then the top four teams qualify for the tournament. Do you like that style, or would you have preferred to play a qualification phase, like kind of like how the men do, where you have to play everyone in a group, and then you may or may not qualify, rather than playing in the tournament and if you don't have
Yeah.
a great tournament, then you miss out.
Yeah, that's a good question. Um I don't think I've ever been in a situation where it's been like that. So it was my first time experiencing something in that sense where, you in a tournament football's obviously different than, if you're just playing a home and away fixture. A tournament in general, it's very like a high pressured. And I guess that's what sometimes people forget is obviously as a team we've been like way before I've been on the team. There's been a long standing like route of success for the team, but like when you're at a tournament, you do forget that you kind of have to like have the mindset of you're winning all the time. So obviously we had group stages, but then when it gets into knockouts, and it's kind of you kind of see it at the World Cup, like for anybody, football is a crazy game where on one day, if you're not like up to standard, you can lose to a team that you're not meant to lose to.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's quite difficult. But obviously, when we had to play Cameroon, and that was like the deciding factor of whether we were going to guarantee qualification or not. There's a lot riding on that, like one 90-minute game. Whether you go to a World Cup or not, and you kind of to be fair, in the moment you have to try and like forget about that in a sense because that kind of pressure can get kind of overwhelming. But to answer your question, I feel like I don't know if I have a preference because I think both ways give you a different kind of experience. And I actually kind of like, even though it was a lot of pressure, I actually liked being in a situation that I'd not been in before. So yeah, I don't feel really strongly either way. I don't think.
Okay. No, makes sense. I just thought it was, an interesting one because, like you said, it just adds so much pressure to the WAFCON, given the
Yeah.
fact that it's also the World Cup qualifier. But I mean, glad we qualified. And now let's get into the talk about the tournament itself. Um, Flying all the way to Australia. I mean, even if you're coming from Europe, it's a crazy time difference still. Was that something that bothered you at all? I mean, I know you had, the team had like almost 10 to 12 days to, you know, adapt to the country. But just beforehand, is that something that felt like, oh, how would my family even watch the games, or how would I communicate with people? Did you have any concerns about that?
Yeah, I feel like before I left, I obviously looked at what time the games were, and luckily it was only our first game against Canada where it was like 3:30 a.m. at home. So not many people watched it. I have a friend in America who when I studied there, she would like come to every game and watch every game, and when I was playing, no matter what game it was, whether it was a group game or when we played England in the World Cup, like even if it was the middle of the night, she'd be up with like a little Nigerian flag and stuff. So yeah, I can't say the same for my family, and I didn't really expect them to stay up till 3 a.m. really. But yeah, I guess that is something that I did look at. But in terms of like getting accustomed, I think I dealt with it quite well because I was on a flight to Australia with Jennifer Echegini,
Yeah.
and she just laughed at me because she was like, Ash, do you normally sleep this much? I was like, what do you mean? Because on the flight there, I think it was 16 hours from London to Perth. And I slept 11 hours of that first flight. So I actually managed to get into the, I guess, the sleep cycle really well. Like when I got there, I
Mm.
think I only napped once on one of the first days. And then after that, um, yeah, I got accustomed really well. It was only when I came back that I struggled. But I also think, obviously, balancing jet lag and then I wasn't feeling that good either made it a bit difficult. But I think as well, it's the first time I've flown business class. So I think I was really like making the most of being able to lie down, which is why it was so much easier for me to be able to fall asleep.
Is that really the first time you flew business class?
First time. And now I almost like, I appreciate going business class when you're going that far, but part of me wishes I didn't have it because now I'm like, how can
You
I,
want to?
do you know, I want all the time. But no, it
No,
was really nice.
I definitely know that feeling. You don't want to go back to
Yeah.
economics. Why do you have to go through the struggle? Okay. Okay, so before the tournament, I don't know how much you check social media or even the Nigerian media to see what people are talking about. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good, so I wouldn't even advise you to be on it that much. But a lot of Nigerians were complaining, and I will say myself included, about the Super Falcons not having any friendly game, before the tournament. As a player that was in that, in that group, in that system, was this something that bothered you? I mean, we've seen how the tournament went, so ultimately it wasn't like a big conversation anymore. But
Mhm.
before, were you hoping to have at least got one, good game to play yourself?
Yeah, we obviously had a couple in that year leading up to the World Cup. We had games against really good opposition.
Yeah,
Whether that was like the US, Japan, we obviously played New Zealand not that long before the World Cup,
yeah,
and all of those games are really good. I think sometimes though it was difficult because we played the really good games, but we didn't necessarily get like when you play games, you always have to remember that before a game it's like a pre-match day, and then the day after it's more of a recovery day. So you actually miss out on training time, and I think sometimes like there were some teams that got a lot of training in, and we played like I said, we played good matches, but I think sometimes there were other teams that probably had more training sessions than what we were able to have. So obviously
mm,
we went to Australia 2 weeks before the World Cup, and then you always have to account for like every team does, but I think some teams had training camps before they even went to the World Cup. So I
yeah,
finished my season with Leicester, and then I was training at home. Like I was training at Leicester when it was just like me and the physio and a coach. I was training by myself, and I think that's what a lot of our team had to do, because we obviously weren't going till 2 weeks before. So we ended up just doing individual training, which is different to being with a team and getting tactical information. But I think that's also I think when I talk about what we were able to achieve in that tournament, like yes, I know we've played really good games, but I think the way we were able to perform based on having like probably less training sessions over the whole year than other teams, I think just goes to show like the amount of potential there really is in the squad,
yeah,
going forward, what we can achieve with, more time together, more things we're able to implement. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, let's move forward a little bit now and talk about the tournament proper. First game of the tournament, we're playing against Canada. Like I said, I live in Canada, so unfortunately for me, I had to watch on Canadian TV, and you know how it can be. All the talk is about their own team. The commentary is so biased, towards their players. And one thing was that they felt so confident before the game. Even though we had played them in Vancouver the year before, they held on to the fact that they beat us in the first game, even though we drew the second match. They're the Olympic champions, so the team is coming in with so much confidence. Um, how do you think we were able to perform so well against Canada in the opening fixture of the World Cup?
Um, the way I've described the tournament to like my family and stuff when they've asked me about like how good our performances were when not many people believed in us was all of us as a team, we just like had this real strong sense of like belief in one another. So going into Canada, obviously, like from a ranking point of view, like we weren't picked as the team to win, but
Yeah,
we went in even though we were quite defensive. We like everybody believed in what we were doing, so it wasn't ever like just because we're being defensive, it doesn't mean we're not trying to like win. I think the good thing with us is like we can be in a really defensive, compact shape, but we have like the attacking players that have enough athleticism to be able to get up and back. So like the same player that's recovering is also getting up in the attack, and I don't even think that's just from a like I said this in a previous interview. Like people talk about our physical attributes a lot, but I think it's also from like this will, like this like mentality that we have as a team. It's like I remember one of my first games. I think it was like I want to say it's OC because OC always says things that really stick with me, and just about like we would die on the field. And at first when you hear that, you're like, my goodness, you know, like it's kind of intimidating, but I really feel that. And when you're on the pitch, you feel as if like, because everybody is willing to put in 100% to try and get a result, it's like you're brought up by that. So like when we were playing Canada, it was like, yeah, there were some times when they really had momentum and they were, you know, in our defensive third a lot, but I never felt as if like we're going to concede or we're going to lose this game. And being a defender as well, like sometimes you have to have the mentality of like, you're not just defending, you are there to be able to provide, I guess, like the catalyst to be able to go forward. But in the same time as well, I feel like I think a lot of defenders will say this, like if you have a goalkeeper behind you that you feel really confident in, like even if they break our line, I believe that it doesn't mean it's a goal. Because for me, I feel like Chiamaka is somebody that I've never like. Chiamaka as a goalkeeper is somebody that I've never really experienced before, because there's been times like in my career where we'll have like a corner, and normally like if I'm in my zone, I think I'm going to win the header in my zone. But she is like so confident at coming out and like punching things. Like she makes my job so much easier, you know. So like even in the, talking on that, like in the when we have corners and stuff, like I feel like I don't even have to do my job because she'll like come out and punch everything, you know. So like when we were playing Canada, I'm like, yeah, they can have shots, but sometimes they'll take a shot and I'm like, I turn around and I'm like, I know she's gonna get it, you know. So it's that kind of belief I think we all have in one another, is like we don't just leave it to people, but we believe that everybody is competent at the job that they've got to do.
No, I'm amazing, and I mean, I back everything that you're saying about Chiamaka. She gives even we the fans just so much confidence and just belief. But in that game against Canada, there was an every moment that we had. You know, after playing a fantastic first half, we go in level, you know, goalless. 3 minutes into the second half, unfortunate bad tackle, you know, by our player, and then Canada get a penalty. In that moment, you know, on the field, did you feel any nerves at that moment, or did you still believe that, you know, even if they had scored, we had everything that it took to come back in that game?
Do you know, at that moment, because people always look at the person who gave away the penalty, but I remember before that even happened, like I believe I should have cleared the ball, like not trying to let it go out. And I remember when it went in and Franny like got her, I didn't really see it, but when Franny like caught Christine Sinclair's leg, and it went to VAR, Franny came over to me. She was like very upset, and I was like, you know, when you see a teammate like that, you're like, you want to take the stress off them because they haven't actually scored yet, you know. Like, and also when you have the Tristan, I thought Chiamaka was going to save it anyway. I really did. So like, there was a couple of us on our side who, like, I went to follow it in because I just believed that she was going to save it. So like, I was trying to go for the rebound. But I remember when Franny was getting upset over like giving the penalty away, I was like, no, it's not you. And then people look at you, but I was like, I could have done better to help you, so we couldn't put you in that situation. So I just, in that sense, I'm like, sometimes you just have to like, there's so many things you have to deal with in a game, but I think you have to control your emotions. And I was like, well, how can I make her feel better at this point? Because I'm like, this isn't on you. Like, it's not her fault. There's so many things we could have done before that, including myself. So I just tried to take the stress away from her and just get her ready for the next thing. So like when she saves it, how can we make sure we're on the rebound so that they can't get an easy goal from a rebound, you know? So yeah, it was obviously a nervy moment, but I think as soon as she saved that, it was like the catalyst again to be like, yeah, we're in this and we can still get a result here.
And okay, let me ask you about your position. You know, Coach Randy Waldrum, if you don't know, he's a coach that gets a lot of slack, a lot of stick rather, from Nigerian media, Nigerian fans. Now they grew to love him after this tournament. But before the tournament, you know, especially at the WAFCON, a lot of people criticized him for playing you at left back. You know, they're like, oh, Ashleigh's not the quickest. You know, she's better as a centre back. And then we get to the World Cup again, and in the first game, we see you at left back, and people are already ranting, like, why is he doing the same thing? Hasn't he learned? You know, blah, blah, blah. Do you enjoy playing at left back? Because you do quite a good job there.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I got very, very nervous to play there because obviously it's not like I don't play there ever. Like at club, I never play there once last year. You know, it's only when I'm with the Super Falcons that I play there. And I think going into the tournament, I'll be real, I had to really manage my loading. Like, I didn't train that much. I had to do a lot of stuff off the pitch because I've been dealing with a niggle that I've had throughout the season. And I was a bit worried of, like, left back is a different kind of, like, there's different demands on you at left back than there are at centre back. And I was all in my head. I was just like, I don't play here very often. We're playing against Canada in our first World Cup game, and we need to try and get a result from our first game. And all these things that go through your head, going into any game. But I think for me, I was just like, I just felt a lot of nerves. But the one thing though with Randy is, like, even when I brought this up to him, I was like, I feel like I'll be, like, sometimes I'm like, I'll play wherever you want me to play. But I'm like, I think he had to reassure me a couple of times because I was so nervous. And he always, like, he never once was like, no, you can't do it. Like, he really believed in me to be able to do a job there. And I think when you have somebody that has that belief in you, that helped me anyway, because obviously leading up to that game, I've been thinking about it for so long, and I'm like trying to keep myself in a position to be match fit because I can't train like everybody else can. It's he helped me a lot in that respect, because obviously football is just as mentally tough as it is physically, and I had to process all of that going into that game. So yeah, I still see myself, if somebody used to ask me, like, what do you see yourself as a centre back or a left back, I do feel like I'm more of a centre back. But when you're asked to do a job, you do the best that you can. And to be fair, I actually really enjoyed it. Like, I think sometimes at centre back you can be a bit restricted going forward, but I do like to get forward, to be honest. I mean, in the England game, I kind of had that freedom, That's the other thing. Like, Randy there's no, he doesn't put any, like, restrictions on me. He's like, just do you. And I'm like, when you go into a football game and you're like that, it's like, well, I'm not going to get told off because I haven't been told not to do it. So let's just see.
And that's one thing that I actually quite liked about you. Even in the Australia game, being able to pick and choose when you make those runs forward versus when you stay back, and just hold your position to help the team. I think it's something that you were much better at, critically speaking, this tournament than at the WAFCON. Because the times that you got up in this tournament, it was like I could see that something was going to come out of your run, and you're not just making a run for the sake of it. And at the same time, even though Ashleigh's not the quickest, but you weren't getting caught, out of position, at the back. So I think that's something that really, really improved, with your game at left back in this tournament, and I mean, ultimately it was a fantastic job, and speaking of the game against Australia, I mean, after playing the Olympic champions and playing a goalless draw, we then have to face the host of the tournament, another highly ranked team according to the FIFA ranking. I remember seeing before the game, I think the betting odds were like 21 for Nigeria to win. It was something crazy. Like, no one believed, at least none of the bookies believed that we could actually win this game. Playing against the host nation, I mean, we did that at the WAFCON against Morocco, but this time it's at the World Cup. Was there any added pressure from just playing against a team like Australia?
Do you know what? I guess there was, but for me, the pressure that I felt was the first game, because it was like everything was unfamiliar. Like, we needed to get a result against Canada. It was my first game of a World Cup, but against Australia, and I kind of felt like this when we played Morocco in a sense, is when you're playing a team where everybody, like the majority of people in the stadium, are not supporting you. It's like, well, my goodness, you got nothing to lose, So we went into the Australia game, and I genuinely didn't feel that much pressure. And I don't know about everybody else, but it seemed as if, like, how we were playing as well, people weren't playing with pressure. Like, everybody just was soaking up that experience. Like, you're playing the host nation of a World Cup, and this World Cup, because obviously there's been so much backing behind the World Cup. It was almost like in that game we were just like relishing that moment, and I think that helped us in our performance, because I don't think we were playing necessarily like nervy, and I think the nerves were more felt in the Canada game because it was all new. Like, a lot of us, I don't know like the proportions, but there was a lot of us that it was our first World Cup, so in your first game you feel all this apprehension, but when you get a draw against the Olympic champions, you're like, well, well, what else can we do? You know, and that's how we felt against Australia. It's like, gosh, we can draw against them, then who says we can't win? And I guess that shows in our performance, in our belief in that game against Australia.
No, yeah, and I mean, getting that win, in the tournament was obviously a massive boost for us. But even from a fan's perspective, the reality is, whilst we've been to every World Cup, since it started, we haven't won that many games. For us, being fans, we were very excited to see that we could defeat a team like that. And then in the Ireland game, we essentially had our fate in our own hands. We needed to draw to qualify for the next round, and if we won, would have topped the group. So did you feel any sense of disappointment, when we weren't able to win that game? Or were you just happy that, we still got the job done and qualified for the knockout round?
Yeah. Do you know what? After that game, I think a lot of us actually felt quite disappointed, which is a shame because it was like we went into that game, we went into every game trying to win, but especially that game when we knew that we could top the group, it was like that was a really good incentive for us, and I think at first, like in the first half, we struggled with, they played a different formation and we allowed bigger gaps to occur than we had in previous games. And I think we almost like got frustrated with ourselves quite quickly in that game. But at the same time, I think we were reminded at the end, it's like Ireland are still a high ranked team. I know it was their first experience in a World Cup, and we didn't concede, we didn't lose, but I think we finished the game, we were like, like if we, if we got a goal or something, it would have been nice to have, it would have been nice to top the group. But I also was like, I don't know, I just had this feeling that we were going to end up playing England. I just knew that would happen. I don't know why. Like as soon as I saw that like Group B and D were like will be up against one another, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, okay, this is gonna happen, isn't it? So I was disappointed to not top the group, but then when I knew it was England after that, I was like, this is actually quite nice, in a way for me anyway. But yeah, obviously playing Ireland, if we're just talking about that game, it was probably the most, out of those three group games, probably the most frustrating. But that's not taking any credit away from Ireland because I think they did everything they could to try and get something. Like they got their first point in a World Cup, so they went out, even though they knew they were going to be out of the tournament, they came up with a lot of fight, and we knew they would because they're like us. I feel like they have a lot of like Ireland as a team and as a country are very, very passionate, so they play that way, the same way that we do. So I knew that was always going to be a tough game as soon as I knew we were playing against them.
No, yeah. And the interesting thing for me was that whilst most fans had no faith in the team heading into the tournament, all of a sudden we draw against Ireland, and now people are upset that we didn't win the group. And it's an interesting shift in dynamics, But at the same time, I think
I can't keep up with fans sometimes.
but it speaks to the job that you girls did at the World Cup because people I remember I had a live program right after the game and people are like, oh, they messed up, why didn't they win the group? And I mean, it would have been great because we've never won our group in the tournament, so it would have been a fine one for us. But at the same time, when you look back at the previous times that we've even made it out of the group, I mean, a lot of people talk about our quarterfinal finish in the 90s, but then that was also straight from the group stage into the quarterfinals because there just wasn't a round of 16 at the time. Even in 2019, when we reached the knockout round, we finished as the third place team, but we had to depend on another team losing to qualify.
Yeah.
So this was still a progression, from a better performance than we've previously always had. And then, I mean, getting drawn up against England, of course, came with another set of nerves for the fans. But like you said for yourself, it was an exciting one. Were you going into that game, texting people on the English team like, oh, I'm going to beat you, or how was the feeling for you before the game?
I actually texted, like, I messaged a couple before we even knew we were drawn against one another because I knew, like, we were based in Brisbane and then England were in a hotel, like, not far from us. So I actually wanted, like, a lot of the girls I've either played with or played against. And I wanted to be able to see them. So I remember messaging, I messaged Alessia Russo, and I was like, oh, like, it would be nice if we can meet for coffee. And then I messaged Lotta as well because I played with both of them. And Lotte Ruben-Moy was like, oh, we can't, I think it was either her or Leslie, I can't remember who said this now, but they were like, oh, we can't meet people a day before the game or something. I think that was the only time I could have seen them, I'm pretty sure. So unfortunately, I couldn't see them or anything, and there was no like trash talk or anything like that. Like, yeah, I really like them as like people and players. I honestly have a lot of respect for them. Like I said, I know them as friends before even like being ex teammates or anything like that. So yeah, I didn't speak to any of them first. There was obviously messages from my family. Like I got a lot of stick from family members or friends back home who were like sending me England flags and
Yeah.
I've had a lot of I've got back saying like, oh, we wanted to, we support England, but it was hard. We were torn because we want to support you. I'm like, I know, but ultimately we wanted England to win. I get it, So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice though. Like like I said, as soon as I knew we were drawn against one another, I was just really excited for it. Like obviously, there's always pressure because it's a World Cup, but I just felt really grateful in that moment that I was able to come against the team that I've represented, and I've been born and grown up here. So all I wanted to do was just savor the moment, and it was actually during the national anthem where I got quite emotional, and I got emotional actually when the English national anthem was on first, and I got emotional at that point because I was like, I can't believe I get to like stand alongside my teammates here, like my Super Falcon teammates, playing the team that I'm here, and I hear about the Lionesses all the time, rightfully so, but like I get to be alongside this like strong, determined, resilient group of women who have taught me so much, and I've grown so much from this experience already. It's only been a short period of time, and I get to play like the nation I was brought up in. I got emotional because I just felt like overwhelmed with gratitude. I guess I soaked up that whole experience of that. I didn't want the game to end. Like it was 120 minutes. I felt like, and like I said, I've been struggling with my body. Like I leading up to that game, I didn't train. I think I trained once between the Ireland and England game. Like I really didn't do much because I was just trying to get through with my body. I was like, I don't know how. I had to have a lot of chats with Randy, and he was always like really, really receptive and listening. He was just like, whatever you need to do, you do. Because some coaches, I do think if I was on a different team, I might not have even got selected to go. Genuinely, that's what I think. But I think like Randy had this understanding that, to get the best out of Ash, she needs a completely different training schedule and training load, which I'm really appreciative of that, because then I got to, play the games I was able to play against England. Honestly, I felt like I could have played way more than 120 minutes. I was just like adrenaline fueled, I just loved every second of the game. And obviously when it gets to penalties, it's tough. But yeah, that game was probably the most enjoyable game I've ever played. Yeah.
Really? Oh, that's amazing. And to be fair, like I'm still young, so I've been watching the Falcons for quite a number of years now. And even in games that we've won 4-0, 5-0, I still believe that the game against England is the best game I've ever watched. Playing
Wow.
against a team that is ranked so highly, a team that a lot of people around the world expect us to lose to, and we bossed them. Like we bossed them, we dominated the game. I think you also chose that game to have your best game of the tournament, even though you had done quite well in the 3 previous matches. And you were this close to scoring your first World Cup goal. How did you feel when that shot cannoned off the bar?
Um, Honestly surprised, because I don't ever get that high at the pitch to like have a shot, So as soon as it bounced down, and I knew that like the bounce was going to be nice, and my momentum, because I was like running full pelt, I was like, I'm just
Yeah.
going to go for, like, well, again, I just had that mentality of like, why not? And then I felt like how I struck the ball, it felt nice. And then there was a couple of plays in the way. So initially I was like trying to follow the ball, and I saw Mary, the goalkeeper, like jump up for it. And then the next second, yeah, hit the bar, and but then it was weird because it wasn't over. Like the ball was still in play, and I got another opportunity after that. But yeah, I must say, when I was on the plane journey home after the World Cup, I watched that shot so many times. I shouldn't have, but I watched it so many times, just thinking like, if only.
If only, it would have been a great moment. And I remember watching the game when that shot hit the bar. I was like, we're actually doing this. Like, it gave me that boost of like we're actually dominating these girls. And I mean, it was such a fine performance. They barely had chances. I mean, there was so much talk about Lauren James before the game. I mean, rightfully so. She had a great game against China, and she's a fantastic player. But we were able. I mean, shout out to Halimatu Ayinde. We were able to do such a great job on her, and she
Mm.
was essentially ineffective in the whole time she was on. I mean, kudos to you girls. I will say like that game brought a new level of confidence to Nigerian fans. Believing that with the team that we have now, we can actually take on anybody in the world and expect to go and dominate the game. Um,
Mm.
I want to ask you about the whole tactical aspects. During the World Cup. What kind of impacts, you've said about the impact that Randy Waldrum had on just yourself, managing you on a personal basis to be able to do well at the tournament. But what kind of impact do you think he had on the entire team? Because again, he's been criticized for his tactics in the past. And in every game of this tournament, we were set up so well tactically, to face the opponents. And there was no game that it looked like we were going to lose. In fact, it felt like we should have won more than we did. So what kind of job do you think Rand Waldrum did there?
Mm. Yeah, so the first 3 games, we pretty much had a very similar tactical approach to every game. It was like quite defensive, like making sure that he worked on with us our low block quite a lot. So we all had a good idea, like defensively, what we were going to do. And I think, to be fair, at times some people were frustrated because it's like we are so defensive. It's like, can we still be able to get the opportunities that we want going forward? Because defending for long periods of time is hard. But
Yeah.
to be fair, I think at times Randy believed in things when we probably might not have. Like, I think there were sometimes doubts of, can we sustain this defensive pressure and be able to, like, not only from like a physical perspective, because it's tiring having to defend the whole time, especially when you're like the momentum's always against you. It's like when you win it back, can you keep the ball and like not just hoof it away and then have to defend again? But I think we all really stuck to like our defensive responsibilities really good, and I think that also comes from like communication is huge, but it's also very hard when you're like playing in front of so many people. It's like whether people can hear you or not. But I think there's some things that come with like the more that you play with somebody, the more how they play and how they want to defend and stuff. And I think we were able to build that through training because we did a lot of repetition of defensively doing stuff. But I guess when we played England and we changed the tactics and it was more of a high press. Like I remember when Randy said we're going to have a higher starting position. I feel like the general consensus of the team was like, yes, like we were all excited to be able to like not just, even though we were sticking to the game plan, it was like we were all excited to be able to like put pressure on people and make it difficult and then win the ball higher up. And in all fairness, we did the right thing at the right time. I felt like because I think somebody from the England team said to one of our coaches, they were like, yeah, we were just preparing. They said that they were just preparing us to be in a like defensive formation and in a low block. So they were going into our game, they were just practicing in possession stuff. But when we put pressure on their back line that they couldn't do as much necessarily in possession, I think it probably came as a surprise to them. So it was probably good that we decided to take that approach when we did rather than earlier in the tournament, because then they might have been more prepared for it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was exciting. It was really exciting to be part of like a high pressing team with this team because I haven't done it that much. Like a lot of the time we are quite defensive, but yeah, it was fun.
No, yeah, and I mean, I have to give kudos to Randy Waldrum for that because it definitely came as a surprise to we the fans, and I mean, it obviously shocked England. Who would have thought that playing against England was the game that would have the most shots, our most ball possession, everything, and they obviously were not prepared for that. The high press worked so amazingly well. We had opportunities, unfortunately, football can just be like that sometimes when it doesn't happen for you, and then we get to the penalty shootout, and I mean we all know what happened, but I think from a fan's perspective, I'm probably the same for the players. once we missed the first two pens, it was kind of like, okay, I guess it's not going to be a day today, because then you have to start hoping that they're going to miss as well, and it
Yeah.
just seemed like things weren't going so well. I was expecting you to take a penalty, honestly. Why didn't you take one in that game?
Do you know what? In all fairness, I feel like coach always asks, who wants to take one, and like I was there, but I wasn't really like, yeah, I want to take one, because in all fairness, the last time I took a penalty in this kind of situation was against Morocco.
Yeah.
And even though I scored, my penalty against Morocco was not very good. So I feel like that was the last time. Like, yeah, people are like, so, yeah, but you scored. So I'm like, I get you. But I felt as if, because I was, I think, 8th in line to take one. I felt as if the people who were like confident to take it, I was like, yeah, fine. Like, if you feel confident to take it, I'm like not going to stand in your way, So
Yeah.
that's how I felt. And, it gets the penalties. And I stood there and I was just like, whatever will be, will be. That's how I generally felt. Like, I can't put any more pressure on myself or anybody else around me, because I feel like in that situation, it's like the universe does its thing,
Oh yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we lost. Shout out to all the players that took pens on that day. Anything can happen. But something incredible from my own point of view, I think, happened after that game. Um, Even though we lost the match, we were out of the World Cup. The reaction from the fans, from the general public, was so positive and so amazing. Like everyone is like, we're proud of the team. They've done so well. How did that reaction make you feel? To just know that people still appreciated your efforts in the World Cup.
Yeah, huge. Obviously, um, I know it sounds like kind of cliche, but people are like, we really support, like, we really appreciate all the support from the fans and stuff. But I don't know. Me personally, I'm huge on actually having like fan involvement. I think it's really important. I think it's a responsibility as players to give time and energy back into the fans, because um, it changes like without them. The game completely changes. It's not what it is. So to have that level of following and support throughout the whole tournament, like not just, the England game, but actually having it throughout. And even when we were playing against like Australia, I remember there was like a little group of like Nigerian fans, like, and they were still so loud. I'm thinking like, you were drowned out by thousands, of Australians, but you could still hear them, and just seeing how passionate they were. I'm like, this amount of people pay their money to come watch us and show that much passion. It's like the least we can do is actually like give them our time. That's how I feel. And I do
Yeah.
feel like there's a good synergy between us both. Like, being part of this team isn't just like playing football for the team. It's like everything that encompasses it. And I feel like, when we perform well, and or just even if we lose, but we put in a really good fight and they know that we're trying our very best, I feel like just giving the fans something to like be happy about or excited about just for a short amount of time goes a really, really long way. So yeah, the support and the amount of backing from Nigerian fans is not anything I've ever experienced before. Yeah, it's a different kind of support, that's for sure.
And that's great to hear. And shout out to all the Nigerians that made it to Australia, for backing the team
Yeah.
and speaking of just being a part of the team is more than playing football. I
Mm.
want to ask you about the songs that we sing before the games. You've been part of the team. I think you've been part of the team for long enough now to have
Mm.
learned, some of these songs. So which song would you say gets you the most hyped, the most pumped up, while the team, I mean, it's mostly praise and worship, but still, which song gets you the most hyped before a game?
Um, you know what? I actually, I it sounds silly, but before every game, I cried. Um, and when everybody is singing, like when we sing on the bus and then like go into the stadium, I think like sometimes people, like some of the fans have commented on videos of when we're walking in, and they've commented on me, and like, like people are like, oh, what is she doing? Or like, she's not like really. And sometimes, like, I remember I think it's like either first or second game, I had my head down quite a lot because there were so many cameras while we were coming in. I was like like crying. Like I got the bus and I was like really emotional. But only because like when, and like I said, it's happened like before every game of the World Cup. I just felt like an overwhelming sense of like, I don't know, like camaraderie. Like I felt as if again it was like that feeling of representing something bigger, and it just made me really emotional. Somewhere, even though like it's a very happy, I'm not sad. I'm just like crying because I feel so like grateful and happy and feel like I'm a part of something like so much bigger. So everybody's like clapping and like singing, like smiling, and I'm like, you know, like, but not in like a bad way. Just that's just how I am. I'm a very sensitive and emotional person. Like I'm deeply impacted by the people that I'm around. I'm a big believer in connection through people. And that's what I feel beyond the team. So I don't necessarily, like I do know some of the words, kind of. I remember asking a physio to send me the lyrics because sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I'm actually understanding the right words necessarily, but yeah, most of the time I'm just like, I'm in it, but I'm not necessarily getting hyped. I just feel like grateful in that moment.
Okay, that's good enough. And I mean, you're allowed to show emotion. At the end of the day, you're a human being, And I think one thing that I really like about this with you is, you keep on referencing the fact that it's for something bigger than just yourself and playing football. And I mean, I think that's the kind of passion that we want from all our players. To understand that at the end of the day, hey, there's 200 million plus people that are believing in you and are backing you, and as long as you give everything, I'm sure we'll be happy. Um, okay, and I remember the last time we spoke, we did an interview. Um, I asked you to speak some Yoruba, and then we did a little bit of practice. So has your Yoruba improved since then?
Yeah, you know what? I asked Monday on one of the buses to bus rides to training. I asked Monday to like she was teaching me things, but I like to like be able to read it, so I know exactly what I'm pronouncing.
Oh,
So we went through like every day. Actually, Deborah would always ask me. She would always say "bawani" to me. Deborah would every day. Um, and then I'd always say like "ekaro," "ekale," "ekason." I have a list, so I'm going through it at the minute, but I'm just trying to learn like a certain like Monday was like you need to know certain words that like could just get you can get by with, and then some people are like um they speak to me in pidgin. Like somebody, it's one of the it was a I think a journalist or something was like, can you just speak pidgin for me? Just like I was like, I don't really know loads right now. I think one of the next things like at my new club I've already said to my dad, I was like, I really want to like take time to be able to learn Yoruba because I think it's important. But I only know like right now is just the basics. Like, yeah,
fair enough. I'll come back to you
yeah,
in another 2 years to see how far you've grown.
yeah.
Yeah.
But every day, Deborah was like Bawani, and I always had to go Mowa, and then she was like, you can always say Mowa Dada, Mowa, and I was like, okay, I got it. So every day,
I
just
shout out
as
to
long as I
Deborah
have
for
certain words,
no, I say shout out to
yeah.
Deborah for assisting with that. That's good to see. Okay, so what would you say of all the words, phrases, in both Yoruba or Pidgin that you know right now? What do you think is your favorite, thing to say, or even just to hear?
Um, my favorite thing. Um, oh, okay. So one time we were talking about like eating, and I honestly, I was even now when I say it to her, I'm still going to pronounce it wrong. But Deborah every day was like, when we would go to eat, she was always like, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but so you have to
Okay.
correct me. But it was like, I found it really hard to say, was mo, Jeon. Jeon?
Jeon.
Is that right? Joan. Yeah, I found it really hard to be able to say, but that's probably my favorite just because it sounds different than the other words that I've had to learn.
Okay. Okay. For anyone watching, excuse the break in transmission that we had. You'd obviously see that Ash is in a different position now. But we'll just continue the conversation and wrap it up fairly quickly. We've of course already spoken about the Women's World Cup, so right now we're just asking out the questions about her life and just everything in between. Um, I think one question that the fans sent that I think would be great for you to respond to is in terms of Nigerian football, being a part of the Super Falcons. You've mentioned a lot about something bigger than you. But what would you say is the one thing that you've learned? The one thing that has stuck out to you the most that you've learned from your time playing for Nigeria?
Hard to pick just one thing, but honestly, how, like, basically, as a group, I've never realized like my potential until being around such like inspiring women. Genuinely, I feel as if I'm like pulled up by all of them. I guess like fans don't really get to know the players specifically, but I think in so many different ways we are like a family, and
Mm.
they are like all the players. It's like we're sisters, like, and I know we don't speak to each other a lot when we're outside of camp, but it's like we feel as if, I feel like everybody can say this, like we feel like we're representing something way bigger than ourselves. And I know people will say like, from our performances and stuff, that you can be inspired by a good performance, but for me, I feel as if like when I stop playing football, I won't remember like the games like that we won. It's like I always believe in like the way that I was able to feel, and I feel as if that I'm quite, like everybody else, like I lack confidence in some areas, but the things that I'm able to realize that I'm capable of doing when I'm surrounded by good people who have the belief and determination to do things even when there's like adversity. I feel as if that kind of, those feelings and the things that you realize about yourself, like it all comes to me as like the things I learn about myself as a person, from being around others that bring you up, is just something you could not like put a price tag on. Like for me, I I cherish every moment with them because I know how much I grow from being around those women who, like, if it wasn't for making the decision to be able to try and like to switch my allegiance, I never would have got to experience this. And I feel like it's a vital part of like my next chapter of like my life now. Like the experiences I've had with that team and the things that we've like kind of gone through as a team have helped me not like take away football. Like I always take away, like take football aside, me as a human being and the things that I'm like, I feel like I'm passionate about comes from and is only elevated by the people that I'm around. And yeah,
Yeah.
I honestly just so grateful to be around those women because I don't think people truly know how resilient they are.
And um, another question I was asked by a fan: would you say no regrets? Choosing to play for the Super Falcons.
Honestly, I've had so many people be like, if you could, would you switch back to England? I'm like, people, people just don't, like I say things that people don't really listen. Like they make their own, reason up. Like I don't play football just to try and like play for the best team. I'm honestly, I feel quite different to a lot of people. Like my ambitions in football are not necessarily just to win something tangible. Like
Mm.
football is a part of my life journey. Like I feel fulfilled when, like I keep repeating it, but when I can be a part of something bigger and I can like connect with people in a way that I'm not able to. Like the people I come across in football are not, like I wouldn't get to meet them if it wasn't for football. So if I'm like, people say, oh, why wouldn't you go back to England? Like you're not understanding the reason that I made the decision to play for Nigeria in the first place.
Mm.
Like for me, I would be playing, so I get quite passionate about this because it's like people only hear what they want to hear, but if I wasn't playing for Nigeria, I wouldn't be playing for anybody. Like there
Mm.
would be no, I wouldn't be playing for England. It would be like that or no international football. That's what I mean. It's like yes, I enjoyed my time with England when I did, but the reason I play for Nigeria is for
It's
what I
beyond.
mentioned before. Yeah, it's like people just need to listen
No,
to
yeah,
me.
I love the passion that you have for it, and I think it's maybe it's just a little bit out. I wouldn't say weird, but it's different for people to hear someone say, "Oh, I'm not just playing to win," and
Mm.
that's why I think maybe sometimes people feel like, oh, she's just saying that, But I mean, I've spoken to you about this a number of times now, and I can tell that you really, really mean what you say, and that's one of the things that makes me like you because we want to see that commitment, that passion, and just the depth, in your words and in your thoughts. I think it's really incredible, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, I don't just play just to play. Like every time I step out with Nigeria, obviously I want to win, but there's so much beneath that as well. Like I wouldn't just like sell myself just to win something. Like, I think people forget is like very much the journey and the people you're connecting with as well. It's not just like having something that you can win and put on, your mantelpiece and keep there. Like that's not what it's about. It's about the
Yeah.
journey you make on it. That's what I'm trying to emphasize.
Okay, okay. And I mean, kind of wrapping things up now. I have to ask this question, even though I hinted at it before we started recording. Um, you of course, ended your contract with Leicester City, expired contract. You didn't renew. So everyone is wondering what next for what next for Ashleigh? Where's she gonna play? Can you give us a little bit of a hint? Is there anything that we can hear about that?
Um, yeah, it's hard because I can't actually like reveal the team yet because it's not been announced. But yeah, like the team that I'm going to, is the same thing I kind of just spoke about in terms of like my reason for playing for Nigeria. Like, the team that I've chosen, I was completely sold by the coach. So, I wasn't. I'll be honest, I wasn't actually interested in the team initially. um, like when my dad brought it up to me, I was like, no, I don't have interest in going genuinely. And then I had a call with a coach and we spoke about the things I just said. Like we spoke about more than football, the things that we want to do in football, the impact, I guess, that I want to have, the connections I want to make, and it just this where I'm going just completely aligns with who I am. And yeah, it'll be difficult, but I'm excited. I'm actually going abroad, so I guess some people don't think that because there's been a lot of rumors, and um, yeah, making the jump to play abroad again and be away from my family is obviously a big thing. But I just have a lot of fire in my belly about what I want to do with the people, but that I believe in. Like my coaches, I'm not even been coached by her yet, and I love her. I think she's incredible, and I can't wait to play for her and meet my new teammates who I've never met before. So
No, amazing, amazing. I mean, wherever you are playing, I mean, we'll of course be supporting you.
thank
Many of
you.
our players play out. I don't think now that I think about it, I think you're the only Super Falcons player that actually is in England.
Mm.
So I mean, it wouldn't be something different for us for you to move outside of England. If you
Yeah.
join, I mean, if you're going to Spain, of course, that's where we have the host of our players. If you're going to
Mhm.
the States, we have lots of players in the States. So I'm sure wherever you find yourself, there'll be one or two Nigerian players. Even in France, we have players, so I'm sure there'll be representation regardless. Um, okay, amazing. I think I had um one or two more questions. So with regard to the Super Falcons, I mean, we've just played at the World Cup, reached the round of 16, but we showed so much potential to do more. I mean, the team that knocked us out, even though they knocked us out on penalties, they got all the way to the final. Um, of the games that they played, they scored in every game except against us. You know, and I will say, and okay, the final as well. But even before they faced us, they had scored in 18 consecutive competitive games. You know, so with the potential that this team has, what would you say, from your point of view, needs to continue or needs to improve for us to be able to even take it up to the next level?
Yeah, for us, I think it's just having the opportunity to be able to train with one another more. Obviously, like you always want to play games, but I think we need time to actually be able to like work on things tactically more,
Mm,
have more like obviously we had that connection during the World Cup, but that has to be sustained. You need like continuation of something that you've built. Like now this is, I think I said this before, but this is something that we want to be the foundation. Like we want to be able to keep that. We don't want, this just to be like a really good World Cup and then we're not necessarily like building on it because we don't have the time to be able to train, or we don't get enough time to train and be with one another and make sure that everybody's in camp, at the same time. And we just need that. We need that continuation now, and that just comes from having us all together to be able to go through tactical sessions, technical sessions, and know what like our philosophy is.
Amazing, and hopefully we can get that. I mean, there's of course a lot of things in the news. I wouldn't ask you about what I know you cannot respond to, but I will say hopefully we're able to just have the continuity of even the coach being able to stay on with the team, and hopefully the guys at the top can fix up and do the right things and keep the players happy, as well as making sure our football progresses in the right direction. Okay, and then final question about the World Cup. I mean, by reaching round of 16, you ladies earned yourselves $60,000 from FIFA. So if I may ask, what's the first thing that you're going to buy when you receive your prize money?
Oh, it's a good question. I'm not really put it in my savings. I don't Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when I move to my new club, I really want my family to be able to come out. So, just getting flight tickets for them, I guess.
Okay, amazing. You seem like such a simple person who just wants to be happy and comfortable, and I think it's refreshing to see. And of course, I wish you all the best. If there's anybody watching this video, old fan, new fan, someone that would watch this video and become your fan, what's your message to people out there?
My message is just be you. I know it sounds really simple, but I'm very passionate about like people just being who they are. Like be your authentic self and enjoy the kind of connections you can make with other people by being you. That's it.
Amazing. Great to hear. Thank you very much for joining me, Ashleigh. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Always enjoy conversations with you. So this was another good one.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for bearing with me with my phone issues.
No problem at all. No problem. I mean, at least we got the important parts and we got everything asked.
Yeah.
For anyone that sent in questions, if I wasn't able to take it, I apologize. We only had so much time. But yeah, thank you very much, Ashleigh.
Thank you.
Bye.